Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello there, my friends, and welcome to episode 5. I hope you are doing really well today. And a quick reminder, a quick request, please go ahead and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't yet, so you don't miss an episode. I know I always love the notifications. I have them on silent. As a highly sensitive person, I don't like those noises popping onto my phone all the time. But when I get the notification for a podcast, I see that on my screen, like one of the ones that I really like and know is so helpful for me. I get this little jolt of excitement. So I want that for you too. So go ahead, if you've been enjoying this podcast, go ahead and subscribe. So today I am excited about this topic. And I want to just start off by saying we are always, you and me, we are always leading in our relationships, right? Intentionally or unintentionally, whether or not we are aware of it or not, we actually cannot help leading, being in a leadership position in our marriages. This is because we are humans, and what we do and how we are being affects the people we are around. And those people respond to how we are being and what we are doing, right? So just think about this. If your husband is stressed or he's complaining about something or upset about something, you're probably more likely to feel more tense around him yourself, right? But when he is playing, it's being playful or feeling kind of light, cracking jokes, hopefully not at your expense, right? When he's in a good mood, it's very likely that you also feel lighter inside and maybe even can act silly and crack some jokes along with him. Yeah? So I know I actually touched on this last week, but I wanted to go deeper into this and really address this at a deeper level today. Now, there is some science that I'm not going to get too into. I think I mentioned it on one of the earlier episodes about this. Of course, there's lots of science about how we affect each other in relationships. One of the biggest ones that I think is so fascinating is we have these mirror neurons, right? Which basically means when we are around another person and we hear a tone in their voice or we see an expression on their face, we might not even realize that we're reading them and therefore we're responding to them. But we have these mirror neurons that basically, it's like there's a little mirror inside of us that reflects how other people's expression of emotion, right? So it's like we can then sort of feel it in ourselves. And like I mentioned before, as highly sensitive people, we actually have more of those, or not more of those. They're stronger. However that works in us. In any case, that's just one of the many scientific explanations for how come, we affect other people that we're around directly. Okay. So, why, when your husband's being playful, you feel lighter inside too. And that works vice versa. And that's really what I want to talk about today, how that works vice versa, how you are the one who creates an impact or affects your husband one way or another, right? So you are a leader. And many of us sensitive people might not think of ourselves as leaders. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I know that was very true for me, but we are leaders. We cannot escape that, right? So one way or another, we sensitive people are leading, and we can lead, we have a gift of leading, quietly or compassionately and caringly. And in our marriages, we can lead really with soft strength by loving, right? and a whole host of other things. Or we can lead grumpily, irritatedly, resentfully, right? I think we probably all could relate to that. I certainly can. I've certainly been there. But no matter what, we are leaders. We are influencing our relationship in every single moment, right? And so this is truly good news and bad news. I actually think it's actually really great news in so many ways, and maybe even the best news ever, because it ultimately means that we have the power to influence and create great, amazing, wonderful relationships without our partner actively, purposefully doing the same, okay? And we do that beautifully when we learn how to lead ourselves first and foremost. We'll talk more about that soon. So the bad news, the not great news about this is that when we don't really have that emotional agency, when we haven't learned how to lead ourselves really well towards love, or when we don't know how to take charge of our own selves, we don't know how to navigate our feelings or communicate well, or we get triggered a lot, right, with no real capacity to handle it well, when we don't know how to move beyond resentment, when we are generally really critical about ourselves or about our partner, when we take things super personally, when we have low self-esteem, when we feel like really needy for love, or we tend to stay stuck in anger and hurt. All of this is unconscious leadership, right? This is how we're unconsciously leading love, and oftentimes into places, leading our love, our marriage into harder, less loving places, right? So I certainly have done my fair share of unconscious leadership. I actually like to call this, just kind of for fun, accidental wizardry. I think our capacity to lead love is really like wizardry, right? It's like kind of feels like magic. My clients tell me it feels like magic when they really grasp it and start implementing it beautifully in their marriages. But we can do this accidental magic, this accidental wizardry too, right? And I like to talk about how I can make it so that my husband reacts snappishly to me. And I bet you can do the same, right? One example is like not so long ago, my husband and I had a great week together, and it was towards the end of the week. And I have 3 sons, spanning an age from 5 to 15. And, they're boys. They're get loud at dinner, and they were playing kind of like at the end of dinner, they tend to like run off and kind of like get wild. And I was kind of exhausted. And then my 5-year-old was yelling. He's been really into screeching lately. So, I sort of fell into highly sensitive person overstimulation mode. Many of you will know what that is. And I just started snapping at my husband, right? I was kind of out of the sort of intelligence zone, right? I was into emotional overwhelm. And in that place, which I've already talked about a bunch on this podcast, we can get a little less emotionally intelligent, right? We can be a little insensitive, right? And so I started doing that. I started snapping a little bit at my husband. And I don't remember what I said, but my tone was a little funny. And I said a few things. And after a couple minutes, my husband reacted to me really with that similar annoyed tone to match mine, right? Perfect example of like accidental wizardry. We do actually take people with us with our energy, with our tone, with our words, right? With our mood, whether it's like grouchiness and anger or sweetness, understanding, and love, right? And the interesting thing about this is that, if we keep up the accidental wizardry, the unconscious leadership of love, into not love, right? That's what happens, right? That this can happen easily in a long-term relationship is that your partner, if we keep that up, our partner will continue to react to us in that same way, right? That snappish way, that annoyed way, right? Which is really ultimately the exact way we don't want them to be reacting to us, right? And, when we do that, I could see if I had kept that up, if I had kept that kind of behavior up, it would have been me creating distance, right? So really, how we show up gets reflected back to us always. And I don't mean every single instance it's like an exact mirror, right? But generally, how we show up gets reflected back to us. So that's true. And if that's true, which it is, let's use that. Let's use that power to have things reflected back to us, to lead our love on purpose, to lead our marriage in the direction we want it to go. Okay? Let's do that, because why not? We have that power. And that's what we want, right? A marriage that feels really good to us. So one more little metaphor that I like to use just to illustrate this concept is that, I truly believe it only takes one person to change the marriage. It only takes one person to change the dance, right? So if we think of marriage like a dance, which it really is, think about like you're dancing with your husband in a waltz. You're waltzing, right? And then all of a sudden you decide to get a little crazy, a little sexy, a little wild, and start tangoing, okay? Now what happens is when you start tangoing, your husband can't keep the waltz going so well all alone, right? He can't, like the dance has dramatically changed, so he can't keep his end of it up. That makes sense? So I want to illustrate this with a story. One of my clients, one of many of my clients who have decided to lead love in her marriage and completely changed the dynamic of the marriage. So one of my clients had a tendency towards criticism, like kind of critical of her partner, kind of like to tell her partner what to do, kind of control him and nitpicky with him. And at a certain point, her husband told her he was looking for his own place and started talking about getting a divorce. Okay, so that's when she came to me. And as we worked together, she quickly started seeing the effect of her accidental wizardry, right? That criticism, that control, the effect that was having on her marriage. And she took back her power, right? To lead proactively, to purposefully guide her marriage where she wanted it to go, right? And so with my guidance, instead of leading her marriage into that divisive place, she started leading love. And in her words, the way she's put it is that she started confronting situations in a different way with calm and poise and grace. And literally within a matter of days or a few weeks, her husband stopped talking about separating and started putting his arm around her, holding her hand and, offering her little snippets of affection here and there, and even writing her love notes, and started talking about their future in a positive way. Okay. So that's just one little story of one of my clients who really took this seriously and absolutely did a 180 on how her marriage was going. So the power to change your marriage like this really starts with you leading yourself. So what does this mean? Like, what does this actually look like? Leading love, leading yourself to love, as I like to call it. Pretty much everything I'm going to talk about in this podcast from here on out is that. That's why I'm talking about leading love right now, to set you up for the best. To make the most of this podcast. But I think pretty much everything that I'm going to share, in terms of how to lead love, falls into 4 categories. And these are categories that I go into depth with when I work on clients one-on-one. We detail them. We really work together, so they're applying them and understanding them deeply. But I will talk about these more on the podcast over time. But right now, I just want to introduce them to you. So the first area, and one of the ways that is so important when it comes to leading love, is leading your own mindset, like having a mindset, developing a mindset. That's pro-love, right? So really what I'm saying is like, one of the ways you can lead love in your marriage is by starting to be super aware of your mind, of all the thoughts that are going through your mind, of what you think and believe and expect, right? What we think and believe are central to how we feel and what we do. Like it's like the source of how we feel and how we act in our marriages. So looking at our minds, being aware of what's going on there, what we believe, what we think, 100% essential. Okay. We'll talk more about this, ways to do that in the future. But I just want you to know that's one of the 4 keys here to leading love, leading yourself to love. The next one, the next kind of generalized area is owning our own power to influence. Right. And that's really what this whole episode is about. But, and I say that like owning our own power to influence with joy, right? Not feeling like it's a burden to ourselves, but it's a powerful thing. It's a privilege to be able to make changes in our marriages, and that and recognizing that we have that power, right? So important. It's kind of a foundational thing to be able to lead love, right? And take the actions that actually do make your marriage so much better, all right? This third area is what I call emotional agency. So developing emotional agency, we might also call that like being able to handle your emotions, manage your emotions. And it really includes, handling your emotions, guiding your emotions, soothing your own self, right? And last week I talked really specifically about that in more depth, is how to soothe yourself, right? How to be sensitive with your own self. So again, go back and listen to that episode. And there's even a specific process to help you do that. And it's really a part of developing emotional agency, right? So important. All right. And then the last sort of general category for helping you to understand how you can lead love in your marriage is what I call love on purpose, right? I love purposefully, even when I don't feel like it's super easy, even if I'm not in the greatest space, I consciously choose to bring myself back towards loving feelings, loving thoughts, towards myself and towards my husband. Because loving breeds love. Loving feelings and actions breed results that we love, right? It breeds that loving response from other humans, from our partner, right? When we're loving, they're much more likely to be loving in return. Don't underestimate this. This is huge. Okay. All right. So those are the 4 sort of general categories. But all of this really entails, like being able to implement this really entails that you decide to start where you actually have control, where you actually have power, which is inside of you, right? All of these things I just mentioned are things that have to go on inside of you first, right? They start inside of you, right? So you have to start by deciding to lead yourself first and foremost towards the love you want, right? So I have a great marriage, right? I have an amazing marriage. And so much of how I have that is every single day I lead myself to love on purpose, right? By implementing these generalized categories that I just shared with you, these 4 pillars of love. But I want to share some of the ways I actually really do that, sort of in a more detailed way, so you can sort of see what that's like tangibly. So one of the ways I do this is I acknowledge the thoughts that arise in my brain, right? Because we all have a human brain that has some sometimes not so great thoughts. So those thoughts that keep me from feeling love, right? Like a thought like, that's so annoying when he does that, right? That sometimes pops into my head, right? And I let that thought be there. And then I gently turn towards ones that bring me feelings of understanding or warmth or love, right? Something like, he cares so much about the kids. That's why he's speaking like that, right? That leads my brain towards more love, more understanding. And that's so much better than annoyance, All right. Another way that I lead love is by telling my husband that I understand why he made that snappy comment, for example. And I make the choice, right, to forgive it and perhaps like even reach for his hand, right? I lead love by giving my husband a hug while he's doing the dishes, right? Even if he doesn't respond, I might just go up and give him a squeeze. Yeah. Just a little way to weave that into the day. I also lead love with playful flirtiness, right? By maybe doing a silly little suggestive dance just for fun when he walks in the door. That's not like a normal thing I do, but I might do that, right? Or add some other little flirty behavior in, just fun. I also will lead love by giving him my full attention. Like I think of this as generosity. Like I give him my full attention to what he's saying for a few minutes here and there, even if he's already told me that same exact thing yesterday. My husband loves to say that, like repeat himself. He forgets he told me things. So I lead love by listening attentively sometimes, right? Being present with him. That's a gift. I say affectionate words by whispering, I love you in his ear, right? Or another way I lead love, this is so important, you guys, is to take space, right? I take space for myself and I leave him space for himself when he's clearly needing it, right? That's a way of loving him and loving me. And I lead love by soothing my own feelings, right? By figuring out where they're coming from, tracing them to that source, and not blaming them on him. Right? By recognizing they're coming from something in me. And I work on them before I bring my concerns to him and we work on solving them, right? I work on solving them in me first before I bring them to him. So that is one of the ways I love to lead love. It takes away so much of the potential, conflict and struggle that we might experience. And that's me really taking responsibility, right? So leading love is made up of these small, loving actions woven regularly into your life with your husband, right? So much of it starts with your mindset. And hopefully this podcast has helped you start to shift that a little bit today to one that empowers you to make these kinds of little changes now, right? And so much of that mindset shift is just beginning to think of yourself as a leader. All right. So I want to give you just a little bit more. What's a leader? Right. Not going to go too in depth, but one definition that I really like that I've come up with is a leader is someone who has a vision of what's possible for herself or others or the world, right? And works up the courage and commitment to walk right towards that vision. Right. That's what it is. So leaders aren't always totally outspoken and bold. I used to think of leaders as that, right? I certainly was not outspoken and bold most of my life. You'll hear more stories about that. I was shy and timid and, unassertive. But I've learned how to first start thinking of myself as a leader and seeing how I do lead so much. And then that's allowed me to step into the leader that I have become now and in my marriage, but also beyond in this realm of love and sensitivity. So you are a leader when you decide you are a leader and you decide to believe in the dream, in your dream and the possibility that you can make that dream a reality. So in this case, like when you decided to believe you can change your marriage and when you decide to believe more love and more connection and all the good things you want in your marriage is possible, right? And then it's possible and available for you. And then you get going and work towards that for yourself, right? And the way that you do that is you follow through on that vision and being that leader by making those small choices over and over every day towards creating that for yourself, right? Even when it's uncomfortable or scary, or you want to give up for lack of evidence that it's actually working, right? There might be times when you choose to lead love in one way. Maybe you're appreciating your husband more than you ever have, like on purpose. You're saying appreciative things to him and he's not changing the way he responds to you, right? That's just a lack of evidence that your leading of love is working, but we don't give up for lack of evidence. Definitely not right away. We stick to it. All right. So again, I want I want to reiterate that as a sensitive woman, you were cut out to lead love. Because you, as we've talked about in earlier episodes, we sensitives are so oriented around connection. Tell me where I'm wrong. That's one of the reasons you're here listening to this podcast, because you love connection. You love real love because you're so attuned to others, because you care so much. These are just some of the reasons you're so good at leading love, right? You are so good at love, especially when you're centered, right? And you have the relationship tools and skills. Those are so key, right? And you can easily learn those. So you're a leader and you can make your dream of a better marriage come true. So start moving in that direction today, right? Decide to stop waiting for your partner to step up, because you might be waiting forever. Someone has got to start leading. Someone's got to take the initiative. So why not let it be you? And I know it's always great. I know. It's always great when two people are taking that initiative and willing to put a lot into the marriage, but that's not always the reality. I know this for sure because I work primarily with women, and I often see women whose partners are not taking that initiative, who aren't at the moment interested in getting help on their marriages or doing much work on their marriages. And the best and most amazing news I have for you is it's not necessary for both of you to be actively working on it. Yes, that's wonderful when that happens, but it's not necessary, right? If your partner's not interested in working on your marriage right now or ever, it doesn't mean you can't have an incredible change in your marriages. You can. And we women make that happen. We do that. I've seen it hundreds of times. And we should do that because it's so rewarding and it feels so amazing. I know because I've done it and I've heard from all my clients how amazing it feels to them, right? But it always starts with one of us taking that step into leadership, into leading love, right? So for now, I gently suggest you put aside any thoughts that come up, like, I don't know how to improve things, and it takes two, and all that stuff, right? That's keeping you from leading, and just choose to step up into that power that you have to lead love. Because like I said, when we do that, a bit of wizardry happens, a bit of magic happens. When we really take that initiative to learn how to lead that love in our marriages, we actually, and this is so cool, we end up transferring that ability to lead love to our partner. So in other words, when we start leading, he eventually, almost always, starts leading love too. This is the funnest part, right? So, for me, this just my experience with this is that by leading love in my marriage every day on purpose, right? By living out all that I know about lasting love, I've taught my husband, not even just like sat down and tried to teach him, but just modeled it. I've modeled so much about being in a healthy, lasting, loving relationship, right? And so now he reminds me of the things I've taught him when I have my moments of forgetting, right? I'm a human being. I sometimes get a little triggered. I sometimes don't do the best things for our relationship. And he helps me now guide me back. Okay. It's just the funnest thing because now I have help in continuing to make our marriage even better. Right. So when we slip into, a little tiff, one of us now, whether it's me or him, is always able to bring us back quickly to connection and closeness. It's not always me anymore, right? And now my husband actually asks for connection time or sets it aside for us when I'm not even having it on my radar, right? He plans dates and he plans surprises for me and he writes me little sweet loving text during the day, right? And he now initiates deep, loving, and open, honest conversations that restore closeness after we've had a misunderstanding or something, right? So he does all of this. It's the best. But it's only because I started, right? And my clients report the same thing, that once they've started to work with me and have really made some big progress in themselves and how they show up in their marriage and they really are leading love, it's inspired their husband to do the same. Right. So going first gets our husbands to go first. It's a beautiful, virtuous, it's like a virtuous cycle, a positive snowball effect. So a couple examples just to give you a little bit more taste of this from some of my clients. Some of my clients say that one specifically said, now that she's communicating in more loving and kind ways, her husband's surprising her with these humble, open, loving responses and bringing laughter into their marriage. Okay, so just one example. Some of my other favorite examples are, one client's husband reached for his first relationship book and started excitedly talking to his wife about it, right? And actually trying out some of the suggestions in this relationship book, right? Because she had initiated and done all this work with me. So he got into it and started initiating too, right? Now there's other examples are, husbands actually sign up to do some coaching sessions with me. I always invite husbands to coach with me if they want to when their husband is coaching with me. And so sometimes they are like excited to do that after they see the changes in their wife. Or some husbands have finally decided of their own volition to go get therapy, right? To go get some counseling that they'd always before resisted because their marriage is feeling better and they are motivated and inspired. Or the husband will start admitting where he's been making things harder and than they could be, and actually starts to work on changing that in himself. Okay. These things feel miraculous to my clients. And sometimes it still feels miraculous to me, like that when we lead, others follow and then start leading themselves. But it truly is just the law of nature, right? We influence people around us. When we lead, they join. And when we do that, that's when marriage obviously goes from hard or just okay to feeling really amazing, right? That positive snowball effect just that ball keeps rolling in a positive direction. So I know that I can almost hear some of you thinking, in the back of your mind being like, but that feels burdensome. Why just me, right? So burden and resentment, feeling like that are common objections I hear when I talk about leading love. And I'm going to go into this deeper, but right now I want to offer this little reframe that you actually have the power to steer things in the way you want. Right? That's not a burden per se. It might feel burdensome at first until you start seeing results, right? But the reality is that with power comes responsibility, right? We've all heard that, and it's true. But it doesn't have to feel burdensome, right? Because the result of leading love, the result of taking these steps and doing this work is that you feel so good to have turned your marriage around, right? It's ultimately, it's a gift that you give yourself. This marriage that you want, this loving, great, wonderful marriage that you want, right? You're doing that for yourself. You're giving that to yourself by initiating, by leading love. All right. So good. So I want to leave you with a few powerful questions that you can, and I really want you to think about these, not just like hear them and move on, but like hear them and sit down and answer them for yourself. Preferably write them down. That's always so useful. So just for getting you brainstorming some ways that you can lead love and that would feel good for you to lead love starting now, I want you to think about this. What does the partner you want to have, what does the husband that you want to have do, right? What's he feel? What's he feel about you? What does he think about you? What would he say to you, this ideal partner that you'd like to have? How would he listen to you? How would he touch you? Right? How would he take care of the house? Like all those things. What would he do? How would he be? Okay. That's the first kind of set of questions I would love for you to answer. And then the next question is, how can you purposefully start being more those ways yourself? Start doing more of those things yourself. Yeah. Like if your ideal husband, wraps his arms around you and kisses the back of your neck, a couple times a day, why don't you start doing that yourself and just see what happens? Like think of it as an experiment. And there might be some very obvious things that your husband loves and you know about him. So my invitation is to start doing some of those things. You start leading love. All right. And use the suggestions that I've gone through in this episode as well. And of course, I'm going to be offering so many more little ways to do this in those 4 primary categories I shared, and like really go deeper into those. So you'll have lots and lots of ways to lead love and really change your marriage incredibly as we continue on this podcast journey together. My hope that this episode really has shifted your thinking and encouraged and motivated you. I hope that this has shifted what you're thinking is possible for you and getting you excited to create so much more love and joy for yourself, right? And I hope that it even's putting some encouragement and joy into the process of doing so, right? Because you ultimately are the one with the power, and that's a great, great thing. And I tell you, it can be so fun. It can be so pride-inducing. It's so empowering and really just feels so amazing to be able to change your life like this. And it really just starts with you deciding to be a leader, deciding to lead yourself to love in your marriage. All right. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you want to increase your power like by 100 to make your marriage way easier and more amazing every day, you've got to get on my email list. Right? Once you get there, you'll receive regular drops of guidance and inspiration and insight and direction. And all you have to do is go sign up to receive my free ebook, The 7 Most Powerful Phrases to Deepen Connection in Your Marriage. And, it'll start you right away on actually not 7, but 12 specific ways you as a sensitive woman can lead love by communicating with your partner in ways that start bringing more closeness and connection and respect and understanding into your daily life together. So go grab that. I think you can find the link in the show notes, or all you have to do is go to lifeisworthloving.com. That's my website. And you'll just find lots of little spots where you can grab that 7 most powerful phrases to deepen connection and get started leading love right away. All right. Be oh so well.